All right, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much. We're gonna go straight into the next session, and then we will wrap things up. So, when Chris Fusner, who's the curator of the whole the new digital initiative that you see next door, told me about the kinds of different initiatives and platforms and galleries that he was trying to put together, I thought it would be remiss of us to not host a couple of sessions at the very least for us to get to know some of these a bit even better than they're able to portray themselves, or in a different way at least, from their exhibits next door. And I think one of the things, Chris, it's very nice. We could look at sort of Kevin's 4-quartering diagram. You could probably do a similar thing with the selection next door. But it was very important for Chris that one of the overriding spirits of Art Dubai also be reflected in the invitation and in some of the platforms there. That being this nebulous term, the Global South. And so what I've done today is I have the pleasure of inviting three of the platforms who, in their own way, are geographically located in this lava-like, part mythical, part real geography of the Global South. But they also, I think, represent different approaches, and I'm sort of keen to investigate how those locales, how those geographies inform what each of these collectives, and they're all collectives, which is very interesting too. So we have Kenza Zouari from CyberBaat. CyberBaat is a collective of artists of African descent in the metaverse. We have Jen Stelko from the Morrow Collective. Morrow Collective is an NFT curatorial initiative founded in March 2021 by Claire Harris, Anna Seaman, and Jen herself. And they aim to bring the traditional art world into the NFT space, and are very much have a very strong geographical basis here in Dubai and in the UAE. And then we have Clara Pei from NFT Asia. And NFT Asia is a digital native community uplifting Asia and Asia-based artists. So will you please join me in welcoming Jen, Clara, and Kenza. So what I've asked each of my guests to do is prepare a sort of short overview in a way, but the things I was interested for us to look at and glean were questions like this: how and why did your respective entities start? And how do you address the geography that you're based in, whatever geography means, okay? Because I think that's an interesting thing about this space. And also to tell us a little bit about what you're presenting at Art Dubai. So we're going to go one by one, and then I have a number of questions, and obviously we will open it up to you as well. We've got about 50 minutes altogether. So we're going to start with Kenza, yeah? So if we could have Kenza's presentation up on the screen, please. Kenza, do you want the clicker? Are you okay for it to?
I don't think I will. Probably, I won't go slide by slide.
You don't go slide. Do you want it just to play?
Yeah, I think it's fine. And then I can just talk.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right.
Go for it.
You can hear me well, right? Awesome. So I can kickstart?
Yes, please.
Awesome. So well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me today. I'm really excited to be able to talk about CyberBaat, which is a project that is really, really dear to me. CyberBaat actually started last year as just a curation and a drop that was done on Foundation, which is an NFT marketplace, and it was followed by an exhibition in Dakar, Senegal, a physical exhibition of NFTs. And that was initiated by Linda Dunia, who is a Senegalese artist and who was the brain behind CyberBaat. And a couple of months after that exhibition, she decided to turn CyberBaat into a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. And a DAO actually works a little bit like a company. Like it would be a modern company where people kind of form a collective and decide and take decisions together on some sort of a democratic system. So we are 22 today in the DAO. All artists except me. I'm a curator, but we do have like a diverse, like really diverse artists within the DAO, both again, like yes, geographically speaking, but also medium speaking. So we have digital painters, people working with animation, photography, and actually we're displaying all the works of those artists at the booth right now. So we are booth 13 of the digital art section, and we're rotating the artwork. So if you come at different times during the day or tomorrow, you might see different works. Now, really the purpose of CyberBaat was really to highlight artists of African descent. Because today in the traditional art world, they are underrepresented, and we fear that it might be the case in the NFT space, in the digital realm. So we decided to kind of build this collective to be able to provide support and also create opportunities for all those artists that would need that, actually. So we are here to connect artists with collectors, kind of organize and create exhibitions, workshops around the world, but also on the continent. So some of us are based in different countries in Africa, and some of us are located elsewhere. So we're trying to take advantage of that to be present actually all over the world, and I think that's very exciting. So we started in Dakar, now we're here in Dubai. Next, we're going to Lisbon. We're also participating in Art Fair Philippines. So we really want to show as much as possible what we are capable of, and I think that's really important, and I think that representation is really at the core of what we do: diversity, representation, art, and education. So today we're here to help onboard traditional artists into the NFT space, and also onboard traditional collectors into the NFT space as well. So it's very interesting, for example, to be here in Dubai, in Art Dubai, because most of the collectors who approached the booth weren't that familiar with NFTs. So we had actually to come up with a QR code that actually explains to you how you buy NFTs and what are NFTs. But we were surprised to see really an openness to that, and also people being very interested in learning more about the artists and what we do, and the CyberBaat initiative in general. So we really want to build a safe community, but really also be like very strong in our message and what we want to do and what we can't do. So just to give you an idea, we represent today 14 African countries. So I am based in Tunis, Tunisia, for example. There's another Tunisian artist in the DAO as well. We have artists from Nigeria, from Zimbabwe, Mauritius, Senegal. That's also the beauty of it. Like we all have different cultural backgrounds, different traditions, different relationship with identity that actually we're tried to show with our booth, because we have a curation around the theme of sacred roots. And every artist had to create a specific piece for the theme, tackling identity, traditions, and how we are perceived by our own, like our own environment, but also how we perceive it in the space and in the traditional art world as well. I think that's it. That's kind of an overview of what we do, who we are, and I hope I was clear.
Thank you. Jen, over to you now, please.
Sure. I would like the clicker, if that's possible.
Of course.
Thanks. Well done. That was really enlightening. Thank you. I think we're very aligned, actually. We've got a lot of love for bringing traditional artists and collectors into our space as well. So here's mine. So my name's Jen. I'm from Morrow Collective. We're NFT curators and consultants. just want to talk you through the name of our company for a moment. So Morrow being tomorrow, you know, we're looking to the future. Our tagline is the art of tomorrow. But Morrow is also kind of an old-timey word, and that links to our, you know, firm roots in traditional art. We're founded by, there's myself and Claire and Anna, which you already mentioned. We're a traditional art people. We've been in the art world for quite a long time. So this is us. See, we're beautiful. There's also Dave, who's our fourth co-founder, and he's sort of tech, metaverse, blockchain.
Dave doesn't get a picture.
It's very secretive. He is on the booth, though. You can go and see him, see his lovely face. He's come out of the shadows. So yeah, this is what we do. We work as a partner for galleries. That was actually our starting point. This time last year, we went to Art Dubai with an iPad with a little presentation that explained NFTs, and we walked around to all of the galleries that we know and have relationships with already and said, do you know about NFTs? Do you want to make some with us? And we were met with a lot of quizzical stares. So it's really nice to see just 1 year later the digital art section of Art Dubai, and we're really proud to have our own booth as well. So we work with galleries to make NFTs from their existing collections, giving them a digital life. You know, if we work with a painter, for example, we might help them with everything from animation to the tech involved with minting an NFT. We're also supporters of unrepresented artists. Our last exhibition was an open call. So yeah, we work with, our underlying unwavering focus is quality art, wherever it comes from. I'm just going to talk you through a few things that we've achieved. So we launched officially in last year in 2021, and we began with a Metaverse Exhibition. So we have land in Crypto Voxels, Decentraland, Somnium Space, Sandbox, and now Realm are our major Metaverse platforms. And every time we exhibit physically, we also exhibit in the Metaverse. We have like a sister show. And this is what our first one looked like. This was our first physical exhibition, which was at Ferretti Contemporary in Al Sakal. And then this was our follow-up one at the Foundry, which is in downtown. And what we like to do when we have a physical exhibition is make it kind of a hybrid show. So we show NFTs on a digital display. We also have physical artworks, and then we use augmented reality to link the two together, which is always a hit. This is something that we're really proud of. One of our partners is FBMI, which is a social enterprise organization based here. And what they do is get hand-woven carpets from Afghanistan, woven mainly by widows and mothers. And they sell them here and send all proceeds back to Afghanistan to the weavers. And we've partnered with them to create NFTs from some of their carpets. This is probably their most famous carpet. It was a gift from the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi to Pope Francis. It was called the Peace Carpet. And we got a high-res image of it and animated it and rebranded it as the Pontifex Carpet, which is actually, Pontifex is the Pope's Twitter handle. And we managed to sell it a couple of months ago for 25 ETH. And we sent 80% of that back to the weavers in Afghanistan, which is really nice, little like extra revenue for them, and they didn't even have to weave it again. That was the first time that we dealt with a minting platform that wasn't OpenSea. So we worked with NFT One, which is a local platform. And here we are at the Sharjah Entrepreneurship Festival, showing a display of digital NFT screens. And this is an exhibition that I already talked about briefly. So this is where we had an open call. So geographically, this is where we started to represent a lot of local artists. Not local as in Emirati, but artists that are based here. A few of them are Emirati. So we had an open call. We were looking for 50 artworks by artists that live here. And it was in line with the 50th National Day, and the exhibition was called 50/50. It was a collaboration with Dubai Culture. And it went really well. It started with a Metaverse exhibition, which you see there on the left, and then we had a physical exhibition as well at the Al Safa Arts and Design Library. Right now, I don't know if any of you have been, but we're exhibiting at the House of Wisdom in Sharjah, which is a collaborative curatorial event. We worked with another curatorial platform called Global Art Exhibition. And what we did there was pair local artists, mainly from our 50/50 show, up with international artists and create these dialogues and relationships between two pieces of art. And this is, I wanted to give a little bit of an overview of what our booth looks like this year. So we're at booth X3 in the digital art section. We've got a mixture of augmented reality, physical artwork, digital displays, and we have a screen showing our current Metaverse Exhibition. So please come and visit. We have a couple of the best known local NFT artists, Amrita Sethi and Basar, and some of the best known international NFT artists as well. Ali Hadyan's one of them. Also some big art names that you might recognize from traditional art world, like Sarah Rahbar and Halim Al-Karim. And this is Realm are our Metaverse partner for Art Dubai. So this is the first time when we didn't actually design our own Metaverse gallery. They did it for us on our behalf. So as you can see, it's a little bit fancier than the ones you saw before. And this is really exciting for us because we started to see what a gallery could look like when you're not being held together in, like a small space. Basically, we could take over, several buildings and have things like enormous bridges and circular rooms. And that's us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And over to you, Clara, please.
Thank you. All right, let me just figure out how to use this clicker.
It's the big one.
Okay. Oop.
I think they're queuing it up.
Okay, no
We could have
worries.
Clara's NFT Asia. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kenza and Jen, for your introductions. It was great to hear about CyberBaat and Morrow Collective, and thank you, of course, Shumon, Fatima, for having us. So, hi, my name is Clara. I'm the founder of NFT Asia. So NFT Asia was founded last year, right around the time when I think actually all of our organizations were founded. So early last year. It emerged out of a need where we felt that Asian artists were underrepresented in the NFT space. And we just wanted to carve out spaces in which we can amplify, the voices and the talents of artists who are already active within this realm. So my slides are very minimalistic, but NFT Asia it's an open and inclusive community in that anyone can be a part of NFT Asia as long as you agree with our mission, you want to work towards the same things as we do. So we're based entirely on Twitter and Discord. So the two platforms that Twitter and kind of crypto people are active on. So very digitally native. We don't have a physical space, and all of our members, including the people in our core team, are spread across the world. A couple of us happen to be based in Singapore, but most of us are really, anywhere. So we're not solely in Asia, like the Asian continent as well. As long as someone identifies as Asian, they're also fully welcome to be one of our artists, and you're free to kind of come and go, but we do have a core team of about 15 admins and moderators who kind of carry out the logistical maintenance arm of our collective. And several of us are from traditional kind of art backgrounds as well, such as myself as a curator. So similar to you, Kenza, it was funny that you mentioned this, but all of the artists in NFT Asia, all of them are artists except for myself. So I just wanted to give you kind of a brief glimpse into what some of our platforms look like. So again, very digitally native. So over here is our Twitter. We're at NFT Asia Official. So Twitter is where we kind of share and try and amplify our artists' posts, whenever they have new works, when they have an exhibition. We really try and kind of amplify their reach and make sure that more of their work is being seen. We also run kind of regular features where we're selecting works by artists who are newer to the space, and their works can be featured on our different platforms. So that has helped artists kind of indirectly either make sales or just gain a new following. And then over here is our Discord kind of welcome page. So if you're interested in joining us, you can simply join us on Discord. Our welcome link is right over there in our Twitter bio. And I just wanted to give you a quick look as well into some of the things that we do. So beyond kind of Twitter and Discord, we also run a lot of different events. So these events can take place physically, it can take place online. Often they are Twitter spaces where most of our community members are. So, we try to run artist talks. For example, we recently did a talk with Deaf Beef, who is an audiovisual generative artist, to talk a bit about generative art, because there isn't really yet kind of a very large presence of generative artists who are working with NFTs in Asia. So we wanted to bring that to our community. We also host pitch practices. So we noticed early on with NFTs that artists would often be asked to kind of go onto stage and speak about themselves as though in a pitch in 5 minutes or so in Clubhouse or on Twitter. So very kind of NFT native behavior. But a lot of our artists don't typically come from backgrounds where they used to identify as artists. They might be graphic designers, fashion photographers, where they've worked with clients. So the way they talk about their work or their practice is very different from that of, say, traditional artists. And we wanted to provide platforms in which they could practice that. They could, get familiarized with what it's like to talk about themselves and really come into identifying as artists. So we're all about creating those safe spaces as well as trying to share resources. So most of our talks and events are hosted by different community members, supported by the core team, so that if someone has a particular skill that they're happy to bring to the collective, we try to make that happen. If someone feels that there's a strong lack of a certain kind of resource in our community as well, we try to look for the right person who can then, say, host a session or make that resource available. So we're a little different from some of the other booth participants in that we're not a gallery. We're not kind of a formal entity. We're very much kind of a loose artist collective with core team. So for example, actually maybe I'll get to this when we talk about the booth. Yes, our booth. So we're at booth X11. Feel free to check us out if you haven't just yet. I think I have a couple of works here to show as well. So an interesting thing about how we came to Art Dubai is we actually fundraised in order to participate, because as I mentioned, we're not an entity with a kind of large treasury. We're also not a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, as Kenza mentioned. So that means we don't actually handle any funds. When our artists make any sales, we also don't take any direct commission. So all of what we do is essentially brought together by our shared love and kind of, shared belief that there's a need for a space like this for artists in this broad kind of Asian category. So in order to do that, some of our artists in the core team actually committed works for this auction that we held slightly before the booth payments were due, so that we could fundraise and participate in Art Dubai in this light and bring some of the artists' works here. So I just have 3 of the works, I think 4 of the works here on my slides, but there are 11 different artists that we've brought to the fair, and this first one is by Ari Harigai. So she is from kind of a projection mapping kind of background. So she's very used to working with projection mapping, concert visual, so on and so forth. But with NFTs, she found a space where she could actually come into her own, work on 3D, 2D kind of visual works that represented her own identity. So this work, for example, called Blank, is a work that kind of grapples with her changing relationship with herself over the years. Next, we have a work by an Indian graphic designer, Ninad. So again, kind of a similar backstory to Ari. With NFTs, they're finding this new way in order to share their own practice and formalize it, but at the same time also be connected to this global community and make sales as an alternative form of livelihood. So a couple more works. This one is by Shumon. I think I had one by John. Yeah, this one is by John. So John is also he has been in the contemporary art kind of circuit for nearly a decade or so and studied fine art photography. But again, with NFTs, found a new way to breathe new life into his works. So these works that we are showing are actually digitized silver gelatin prints. And by minting them as NFTs, he's kind of also showing them together as a series in a very different way he would have as physical prints. They would have been, kind of individually hung up, perhaps on the same wall, but he's chosen to show them, for example, at our booth as a kind of slideshow that weaves into each other. So you're really seeing how these images talk to each other in a very different way. So coming back to our central vision, we're really just a community that is focused on uplifting and supporting Asian artists, and hopefully, kind of realizing a very Web3 digital native ideal by the way that we organize ourselves and put ourselves forward. And thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Pat. Just to get things going, I mean, it's really interesting. You're all, fair to say you're all 1 year old? Is that right?
Yeah.
1 year old, which is quite extraordinary.
Little babies.
And, but I mean, you did touch on this a little bit, but I'm kind of curious about how, how technological you are, or you've been, or the members of the groups have been, and whether, or was it, I mean, in a sense, are these initiatives that are crypto native, i.e. coming from, people in the crypto space, or people, or Jen, you mentioned the three of you come from a traditional art background, and therefore you realized, or you thought, this looks interesting, this looks urgent, and you've had to adapt yourself to that. I'm curious about the bridging, and whether, because we have this whole thing in one of the last sessions about crypto OGs, people who've been in the space for a decade or even 5 years in the space is a very long time. Even a year is a long time in the space, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's I sort of want to ask how you fit in that sort of the crypto timeline, given that you're all roughly a year old. Jen, maybe?
So I actually got into NFTs in 2020 as an artist. I started minting my own NFTs on Super Rare. And for me, it was the first time that in my career I was doing better and selling more work that was just my work, my brainchild, over commission work. So that was really exciting for me, and I just fell into the rabbit hole, like real deep, real fast, and I loved it. And Anna, who's a curator and an art journalist, and was a good friend of mine, I was talking to her about NFTs and how it all works. And we saw that, it felt like we needed to raise the profile of NFTs a little bit, but also kind of sort through the space because it was, at the time, a bit of a mess. Even the curated platforms, even the ones where you have to go through a very rigorous application process to be included, like Super Rare, once you're a verified artist, you can still upload anything you want. And when we were talking to traditional art people about NFTs, the general vibe was it's a mess. There's no curation, and we find it hard to find quality art. So we just wanted to bring our expertise, I suppose, into the sphere. It wasn't that we were trying to jump on a bandwagon that was taking off. It was that we thought we had something that could help. And And the way we operate has kind of morphed. When we originally started, we had this vision of just being a metaverse gallery, pulling NFT art from wherever we could find it that we thought, had a reason to be shown. We really love art that has narrative and has substance and has something to say, and is beautiful, obviously, and conceptual. And we were trying to just start by showing NFT exhibitions in the metaverse. It kind of morphed, the business morphed from there into being a lot more face-to-face and having physical exhibitions and things. But yeah, originally it was just, we did plan to be completely NFT, crypto, online native. Yeah, we found that because of our relationships here and the galleries that we work with, physical exhibitions ended up, becoming a really important factor in things like sales and, relationship management and also, our own PR and things like that.
Kenza, how technological is the group?
I think the fact that it started, it really started from the Twitter community, like finding each other on Twitter. And connecting with people and realizing you have the same vision, the same needs, and the same aspiration was really easy. You jump on a WhatsApp group, you jump on Discord, and you start exchanging ideas, and you see that it is kind of easy to actually gather a group of 20 people in like just a day or two. But we do want to onboard more traditional artists in this space. When I first joined, and I also joined in 2020, which is funny. I think a lot of people actually joined in 2020 during COVID.
What else was there to do?
I was always at least on Clubhouse, and that's when I learned about NFTs, and I had no idea what that was. But the first thought that I had when I actually understood what an NFT meant, and also what the NFT space was about, I'm like, oh my God, this would be amazing for Tunisian artists. Because in Tunisia, the art scene is so small, and existing galleries there are kind of gatekeeping. So you have a very, I don't know, we have like maybe 5 main contemporary galleries, and then they're always kind of showcasing the same artist. It started to change, but 2 years ago, it was really very small, and I'm like, oh my God, but NFTs and having this community and being able to show your work to like people all over the world in such a simplest way, because you have those communities you could already talk to. And I don't know if you had the same experience with NFT Asia, because I feel like as soon as you kind of tell a little bit about your story, the obstacles that you went through, what do you aspire to do, then you find very quickly some other people sharing the same thing. So that's what happened with CyberBaat. And so I think that's what is important, the way that you can onboard people to show their work to a broader audience with the support of the community, sharing your work, finding new collectors. So you can also benefit from the fact that some people were actually crypto OGs or that were there before you, and so can introduce you to other people, understand a little bit more how all of these things work. I didn't know what a DAO was. And I'm not even sure I can fully understand all, the layers of what a DAO is, because you can shape it also the way that you want to. So it's good to be able to connect with people who can actually teach you things. And I think that space is all about education in the end. It is about art, but it's also a lot about education. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Thank you. Clara?
Yeah, in terms of how technological, basically how NFT Asia started was because we realized there were a couple of us who are trying to learn more about NFTs, including how smart contracts work, talk about what are gas fees, trying to game kind of the system so that, artists would mint at a more affordable time, for example, and realize that the learning curve into getting into the NFT ecosystem was really steep. And there was a lot of new jargon, there was a lot of new concepts that we just, we were struggling to kind of wrap our head around. And then realized that, hey, what if we just created a group chat and shared resources or readings, maybe maybe that learning process would actually be easier. So that's actually how we started. That's actually how we got on Discord. So I guess the impetus was also coming from a place of wanting to learn, because we understood that many of us at that time especially came from contemporary art backgrounds or art history, and didn't have all of that super sophisticated technological understanding of blockchain. In terms of how we organize ourselves, I think we're similar to what Kenza said. I think there's a lot about education. And you also realize that by being a part of the space, it's just part and parcel of having to understand the technology increasingly so. So for example, I think we definitely benefit from having people who are crypto native, who understand different parts of blockchain, for even how to work with developers, how to work with smart contract developers in particular, who can allow artists to then achieve the things that they're hoping for. But these are not necessarily technological skills that we all had prior to entering the space, but just by being in the space, by virtue of it, you have to kind of catch up to it. So I guess as a group, and from what it sounds like, I think we're all rooted in what is social and what brings people together, but it is necessary for us to be technological in a way just by being a part of the space. Yeah.
Thank you. So I want to ask you about location, or the notion of geography. Because I guess the promise of the promise of the internet, even in its very early days, was that it somehow collapsed time and space. That instant. We still quaintly might refer to IM, instant messaging. So this notion of like a contraction of the world, which goes hand in hand with like late globalization. And then we have this very mystical term of the metaverse, again either with a capital M or with a small m, and I think the difference between the two is very important. And then there's also a contest between decentralized metaverse, like a Web3 metaverse, or a Web2 metaverse. But could you say something about how the relationship between where you are geographically located, but also the kind of liberatory potential of, let's say, a Discord feed, or a Twitter space? Like, what space is Twitter? Geographically, technically, it's a number of server farms around the world, but it's where time zones collapse, right? It's where geography is also arguably identities, because not everybody has to use their actual identities, right? So, but at the same time, it seems that where you are from is a very important part of what you do. So is it right to say that, the kind of pure abstraction of getting rid of place is something that we've left behind? That place, we're still very robustly dealing with the notion of geography, place, and identity that's situated in those physical places?
Okay, I could start.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think technically access is open and inclusive to all, because we're using these online platforms that are easy to kind of be onboarded onto. But realistically speaking, especially thinking about a lot of the areas that NFT Asia is focused on, say like Southeast Asia or South Asia, that access doesn't look the same for everyone, right? Like, firstly, you have to be in a place where you have stable internet connection. You have to be in a country where government regulation might be friendly to cryptocurrencies. And these things differ for person to person. And so that access actually looks very different. And we also noticed, and I guess this is part of the impetus of NFT Asia, was that in the earlier days, by earlier days, I mean like last year when we started, we noticed that a lot of different events, as on Twitter or on Clubhouse, were hosted at like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. our time, which is GMT +8, like kind of Singapore, Beijing time. And that meant that a lot of the people who, from this part of the world who wanted to partake in those conversations either couldn't or just had to, really stay up and be super committed to be a part of them. And that signified to us that perhaps there was a lack of events, of conversations that focused on this geographical location. And so that also pushed us to then consider, what does access actually look like? If you consider as well kind of the global or international events surrounding NFTs, where people have tended to congregate for like NFT conferences or NFT like large like decentralized kind of exhibitions like NFT NYC, NFT LA. I think you kind of get what I'm going towards. So we felt that there was a lot of kind of conversations around a particular part of the world, even though access is open and technically anyone can be a part of it. And that's why we exist. Yeah.
I kind of share the same thoughts, because it is true that the first thing you think about when creating an online organization is that it's going to be easier because you don't have to physically be with your collective or always be together or having to travel or things like that. So you can always sort everything online. But it's not as easy as it sounds, because as Clara mentioned, not everyone has a very stable internet connection. Not everyone has a smartphone. Not everyone has a PC. Not everyone has those technological, the technology to actually be able to be connected online. And also, let's talk about time zone. It's really interesting because, yes, even on Clubhouse when it all started, or on Twitter Spaces today, some of the biggest rooms or spaces on Twitter and Clubhouse, they start at my night, so like my 2 a.m., my midnight, because they're targeting a US based community. But we're lucky with CyberBaat, to be honest, because we have the power to also create or organize small physical events in our respective countries, to be able also to do our part of the job and educate our local communities as well. And we also are really all over the world. So we have people based in the US, based in a few countries in Africa, and then in Europe as well. Actually, I don't think we have anyone located in Asia, but I think that's kind of helpful, because with CyberBaat, we decided to host a few spaces, and that we feel like we can actually target all those time zones. And we know we have the power to organize different events in our respective countries, which I think is also helping. And for all of the international events we're participating into, there's always 1 or 2 or 3 people able to travel. So we make sure that we can actually be present and represent. And that's all it is about, like representation. But I don't think I don't think the metaverse is easier than real life, and I think it has its own obstacles. We're trying to build a gallery on Arium in the metaverse, hoping that it would at least like help people actually check the kind of art that we have and we can curate there, because it's easier in terms of how often you can create a show on a virtual space. It is easier than curating in the physical space. So that's the only kind of difference that I see. But besides that, we're just running into different type of obstacles as well.
Jen, I mean, the three of you are located here in a place that is very aggressively crypto blockchain forward. And so presumably that makes a huge difference, no, to what you do and what you're able to do.
Yeah.
Is it a good, nurturing place where, in a sense, I mean, as you've all said, I mean, education seems to me is such a key thing, no? And onboarding people and getting them across especially the terminological divide, right, which is very, very difficult. But does it help to be in a place that is where there are a lot of crypto companies, there are a lot of blockchain companies, the government has been interested in it? How does that play into what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So when we first started, it was really in line with NFT becoming a buzzword. So PR-wise, it was great for us because we were a local company and local press wanted to talk to somebody who knew about it, and so PR has never really been a problem. We always have had open conversations all the time. And in the past year, we're seeing more and more crypto events pop up, metaverse events and blockchain conferences, and they're just happening all the time. Having said that, although this new law is just starting, where crypto companies are going to be a lot more supported, there's been like a couple of little admin issues along the way. Like, we struggled in the beginning to get a bank account because banks are scared of crypto companies. Yep. But I mean, the whole reason that I loved NFTs to begin with was that you didn't need to stand physically in front of a piece of art to appreciate it. If you're a painter, you finish a painting, you need to find somewhere that can go where people can see it. You need to find a gallery to support you. Nobody's really likely to buy it unless they can physically stand in front of it and appreciate it. And all of a sudden, with NFTs, your audience is completely global, and it can be seen by hundreds of thousands of people instantly. So I think the intention is for geography to not matter. But then, having said that, obviously face-to-face relationships are always really cemented when you meet somebody in person. Absolutely. And all of our gallery partners that we started with, most of them, 10 out of 12 when we first launched, were based here. But the art that they were sourcing and the artists that they were supporting were from all over the world. So although our first point of contact being the galleries tended to be local, the second point of contact, the artist, was always very international. And our collectors are from all over the world as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing. I'll be opening it up to you guys in a minute or two, so if you've got questions, please get them ready. I'm very happy that I'm in a gender minority on stage, and I think it's important to ask a question about gender. It came up yesterday, rightfully, but ironically, the gender distribution was exactly the inverse of this. There was one woman here, and there were 3 men on stage, but it's often said that crypto space is extremely male, that it's also extremely white, and that seems to go against a certain other kind of more aspirational message, which would be, this is a new space. Could we not sort of start from new principles, right, and kind of build a different world, et cetera, et cetera? And to what extent are things sort of condemned to repeat the infrastructural biases, right, of the past, and whether that's race or class or gender, or how much of it, really does have a kind of utopian potential, or a pragmatic utopian potential, let's say. As 3 very prominent, brilliant women working in the space, how do you feel about that? I mean, you've all addressed, I think, your cultural contexts, right, and how important that is. But when it comes to gender, how do you feel about that? Do you see it as a structural problem that is merely repeating what we've always seen in the past, or is there anything there that gives you a bit more hope?
Well,
Jen?
Can I take this one? So I think that it's definitely predominantly male, and it's because it's been birthed in the tech industry. It's a tech industry which is heavily male-dominated. But there are communities within communities that are completely female-focused and supportive. There's an organisation called WOCA, which is Women of Crypto Art, and it's been around since the beginning, and they have sub-communities and projects, and there's a lot going on to support women in the space. The way Morrow Collective has worked, because we're first and foremost curators, we actually meet a lot of women in the space as well, a lot of art people, and especially in this region, a lot of galleries are run by women, actually. And we find that being a female-founded company, we have this edge and we have this, way of forming relationships that I think gives us a little bit of a head start. Yeah, so I think it has the potential to shift for sure. And yeah, I think there's a lot of initiatives in place to maybe make the equality a little bit more.
Thank you. Kenza, how do you
I think Jen said it all. It is true, like that even today, the space is still very white male dominated. But, and you can see, on some platforms, NFT marketplaces can show you the top artists. Just look it up, see who's there. It can answer a few questions, right? And CyberBaat, the good thing is that, well, Linda was the founder, and we're very balanced. We have, I don't know exactly what is the percentage, but I think we're pretty balanced, and I think that's important. And we're trying also to talk about about gender, sexuality as well, everything that is minority related, actually. And like Jen said, there are many initiatives today that are trying to empower women artists or empower queer artists, and trying to really put forward some initiatives that are women-led. And you have big NFT collections today that are actually that were founded by women, and that you have World of Women, which is a big PFP project. I think these are very important to kind of show a different side of the NFT space, because even though it's true it was created by a very, the crypto space in general was very white male dominated, it doesn't mean it has to stay that way, right?
Right.
So I think we're all working towards a more inclusive and diverse space, and all those communities that are being created is actually to be able to show and to highlight the different perspective and different cultures, genders, sexuality, and that's where we're heading in it. And I'm love seeing it. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Clara, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think just because NFT Asia is purely digital, and we're kind of a loose collective, and that we really interact with a lot of different people, collectors, artists, interested people who do not necessarily have to be a part of our core group, that we do see at times challenges with this kind of cultural environment that we are situated within. If you even look, for example, at like the top artists, right, in the market, or even like the top kind of PFP projects and the kind of aesthetics that they portray, I think the norm is still taken to be of a certain archetype, which is, as as was discussed here, perhaps white male. That anything else outside of that is then considered the diversity count, right? This is here because we wanted an Asian artist, therefore we went to NFT Asia. Which is not to say a bad thing at all if it means that an artist's work can be elevated and brought to the same kind of equal playing field. But I think the problem is that often it is not, or it is not done in a way that is thoughtful. So I think with NFT Asia, what we are trying to push for is similar, I think, to what you said with CyberBaat, is for these different kinds of identities or these different backgrounds that one can come out of, for them to be considered at kind of a more level field, even though we recognize that just because we're kind of moving into this parallel ecosystem or the metaverse doesn't mean these structural infrastructural issues or societal issues have been solved magically. In fact, where we fear the amplification or the acceleration of these issues. So, within NFT Asia's community, because much of our conversations are really digitally web-based, we try to moderate as much as we can without kind of imposing any strict rules, as long as everything is respectful, regardless of someone's identity or background. That's productive conversation that we're happy to facilitate. But if we see there to be an abuse of such a space, then that's when we kind of step in. And we learned over time, throughout even just this past 1 year, that certain rules or certain structures are necessary for us to carve out the kind of inclusive and safe space that we're hoping to foster, because that's not necessarily super present on everyone's mind with NFTs.
Thank you very much. Before I ask my last question, I'm going to open it up to you guys. Is there anybody that has anything they'd like to ask our guests? Yes, no? At the back, please. Can we get the microphone back there? No, we need it for the video, please. Thank you very much.
Hi, my question was more from purchasing from the UAE, people buying from within the UAE, the comfort level. Because when I go to many events and I'm seeing much more NFT-related artwork, I get very interested. I scan the QR code. I end up in OpenSea. I see a lot of artwork. Not a lot of it is being purchased. Is it lack of comfort? Is it the historical part of art is not something we want to pay for? Is it... so what do you think the background is? And what is needed to bridge that? Because a lot of the efforts that you shared on stage, all of you and your different projects, will require the end result, which is the actual purchase, so that everybody else gets is floated up. Because you're doing all of you're getting them together, you're doing the tech aspect, you're doing the promotional aspect, and all of this. It has to consummate at the end, right? So, why do you think there's not enough? And what is needed for the gap to be bridged?
So. We operate as a kind of like a high-level boutique sort of situation where we're a low volume we have a small amount of NFTs we're dealing with at any one time. So that means that we can really handhold transactions. So we have the ability to meet face-to-face, talk somebody through exactly the process, like get the MetaMask account, buy the Ethereum. All of it, but it's a huge barrier. Like it'd be much nicer if everybody was already working with crypto and understood how to make the purchase by themselves. So I think that's definitely a problem, or not a problem, but something it's becoming easier over time. But there's also, because NFTs are kind of a new thing, they're a little bit scary to some people, and there's still a lot of mentality involved with buying an NFT that is like, where do I put it? How do I display it? How do you hang it on your wall? What's the metaverse? All this sort of stuff is constant questions. What gives me real comfort, being in the industry, is that all of the questions that are being asked remind me that we're still very early. I have a lot of faith that the industry is going to take off and it's going to become a lot more second nature. And I think with younger generations especially, I know my kids and other kids tend to have no problem with spending their hard-earned pocket money on digital assets already, being in the games that they play. So if you see them as the collectors of the future, then all of these initial points of where you turn around and say no, I think they're going to be a little bit less of a worry, less of a concern.
I mean, I guess the other way to frame the question is, the relationship between supply and demand, between creators and audiences. And I always think about the fact that, MoMA typically gets like 6 million visitors a year. How many of those visitors actually buy art? 0.00001%, right? Like, so there's a way in which, art as a civilizational product has had its power beyond ownership, arguably, right? And more recently, we've now had the phenomena. Art's always, as I think Dorian Backe sort of pointed out, these dynamics are not new, so it's wrong to sort of suggest that art has only recently been financialized. That's rubbish. But, there are infrastructures, Hito Steyr writes about this, about duty-free art, this kind of free zone art storage where art, they can go from, in a way, they're a bit like NFTs, no? They're literally hidden away, and then they go from one buyer to another seller, but they never leave the free port, no? But I guess, I mean, presumably, I mean, what happens online is you get a completely different demographic, but also scale of audience. Many people can see things, whether they're going to buy them. I think, I mean, there's always been this, I mean, the number of people that buy versus the number of people that simply enjoy by sort of consuming visually or in other ways is always a small percentage. But I suppose the fact that an NFT drop could have 10,000, an edition of 10,000, is on the assumption, is it not, that consumer base is much, much larger, no? Than a traditional, the idea that a Gagosian would do a print in an edition of 10,000 is kind of like, it's counter logical to the traditional system. So maybe something about this, like, I mean, in a world where everybody can be a creator, you're also going to need everybody to be a collector as well, no?
Yeah.
Kenza?
I'll let someone else take it.
No, just one thing that is, I think, very important is that you mentioned an NFT collection of 10,000. Usually these are PFP projects, and but there is art, it's true, but behind there's utility. We haven't talked about utility at all, because in the NFT space, well, we actually talk a lot about utility, maybe not really with NFT art, but in general, when you launch a profile picture project, so what we call PFP projects, so usually NFTs with like thousands of different, it's the same character, but with different attributes, for example. They all come with some kind of utility. So all of these projects have to have a roadmap, explain to the community what they plan to do. And I think it's just a very different dynamic than just NFT art, because you're also buying to resell as well. So there's also a whole flipping and financial incentive behind. So it's not a collector, like an art collector, like from the traditional art world, I would say, might not be interested in the PFP project, but maybe more in the NFT art. So one-on-ones usually, or very low editions. And someone who comes more maybe from a financial background will be interested in buying a PFP. And well, I'm stereotyping, but I just wanted to highlight the difference between the PFP projects with some of the art that you are going to see in some of our booth. Like it's very different. It's a very different approach that is actually look a bit more like the traditional art world,
right?
Where people are actually looking for one-on-ones. They want to be the sole owner of one NFT.
Mm. We had somebody come to one of our physical exhibitions who said, what do I get if I buy this? What's the utility? It sort of baffled us for a moment. But yeah, there is that mentality in NFTs for sure.
We have run out of time. My last question has to be about the future. And I'm curious, I mean, you're all, it's really wonderful. You're all just a year old, as it were. And I think, as you pointed out, Jen, I mean, it does feel like the whole, that so much has happened in 1 year. You know? Like, I remember this time last year, it was as though the asteroid was sort of just about to hit the traditional kind of art world. And it's interesting, as you say, and I think it's a testament to a sort of Dubai spirit that it's been, the Art Dubai moved so quickly, right, to incorporate that. But where do you see things going in like a year or 10 years time? I mean, where would you like them to go? And crudely put, there could be a fork here. One is that there is more of this, which is that the traditional institutions, traditional legacy art world, hosts more of this, right? Dialogues, engages with, et cetera, et cetera. So there's kind of either collaborative, at the worst, would be a more sort of parasitic relationship, let's say, or, are you more ideological? Like, should there be an entirely separate MoMA for NFT and digital art that says, actually, no, we're not going to be a sort of another department in New York or in London. And actually, we need to build our own institutions, which is what we were talking to Holly and Matt about. Where do you see things going, or where would you like them to go? Briefly, please, and then we'll have to wrap it up.
I think
Clara, and we're going to start with Clara, please. Yeah.
I think I personally would like to see all of them. I think the point about NFTs is that it's opening up, parallel ecosystems, cultural kind of fields in which, more artists, more collectors, more cultural workers can engage alongside, but also outside of the current institutions and infrastructures that exist in kind of the traditional art system. So my hope is also that more traditional art people will host these dialogues. I think there's still a lot for us to share in terms of learning. For example, I think all of us come from a traditional art background, and we still see value in the backgrounds that we've come from, because the traditional art market and art history has obviously existed for a long time. And there are a lot of learnings to be taken there into the NFT world as well, and vice versa. So I think the flourishing of both of these parallel ecosystems can take place.
Jen?
I think predicting what's going to happen is pretty hard, but I can tell you that what my ideal vision would be a full integration. So I like the idea of phygital pieces, which is where you get a physical artwork that has an NFT as a counterpart, or maybe as a form of a ledger, or it becomes the certificate. And I love that the idea of a new generation of collectors will come in and potentially not just be interested in NFTs, but form a new love for traditional art as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, very briefly, I'm also very excited about digital art and how we can actually merge the two. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing how technology is going to evolve to allow us to experiment NFTs a different way, or digital art in a different way. And I think the cultural institutions should embrace that technology to even display just a new, how are we going to experience art in the future? Because I'm pretty sure it's going to be a bit different than what we're seeing right now. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm looking forward to.
Amazing. Before we thank our guests, just want to remind you, we're going to take a 15-20-minute break, roughly, and then we come back for 2 sessions from the Bybit Talk series, both of which are going to be really interesting and really fascinating. So if you need to take a break, please do, but we'd love to invite you back. And with that said, it's the end of the formal Global Art Forum session today. Will you please join me in thanking Jen, Kenza, and Clara? Thank you.